Our strategy to go after this army is very, very simple. First, we're going to cut it off, and then we're going to kill it.
In the early stages of planning, General Schwarzkopf had been offered the assistance of 5 recent graduates of the School for Advanced Military Studies, the finest war college in the world. Schwarzkopf dubbed them the Jedi Knights and assigned them the task of planning the ground assault against Iraq. The Iraqi position presented some very promising possibilities. Saddam's infantry divisions had dug in along a 175-mile line from the Persian Gulf along the Kuwait-Saudi border, 40 miles into Iraq. Hussein had also deployed additional troops along the Kuwait coast, protecting against an amphibious assault by the much-feared Marines already rehearsing for a landing. Supporting the frontline units were armored infantry and mechanized infantry reserves. The Republican Guard, which had led the push into Kuwait, had been pulled back into southern Iraq, ready to plug any breach in the line. The Jedi Knights knew that by orienting his entire force to the southeast, Saddam had left his right flank open to attack. A swift drive to the north, followed by a sharp eastward turn, would cut Iraq's army off so that the coalition could kill it. Schwarzkopf called the proposed flanking maneuver the Hail Mary. But the plan was nearly compromised before the troops on the ground could be put into motion.
And we had actually tipped our hands, especially on one particular occasion. We had mounted 2,000 aircraft. The flash briefing came down that they were going to mount 2,000 aircraft, basically everything they can get up in the air at one time, and fly it so much toward Iraq in such a high speed it looked like we were actually going to start a bombing run into Iraq itself.
The Great Air Armada never entered Iraqi airspace.
And then they would stop just short of the Saudi-Iraqi and Kuwaiti border, all along that Saudi border there, and they would stop and then divert away back south. But if Saddam had really looked at that situation for what it was, he would have recognized if we were able to put that many aircraft in the air, we were ready then.
Even at that early date, the coalition air power was enormous.
And it was incredible. I'd never seen such a display of flying power in all my life. I mean, you would look up and you would just see everything. The black specks of the B-52, they're so high up, and you see the lower flying aircraft, the F-14s, the F-18s, and as you're looking up, suddenly you're just out of relapse or out of reaction. You're ducking because A-10s just flew over your head because they keep up with the sand dunes.
In order for the Hail Mary to work, Central Command needed to maintain the illusion of an amphibious landing and prevent the realignment of Iraqi forces to the west. Therefore, Marines off the Kuwaiti coast went through regular exercises to make it appear that they were preparing for an amphibious attack.
At that same time, the Marine Expeditionary Force were mounting false amphibious assaults. They would try to charge toward the one island. There was an island just off of Kuwait City in the Persian Gulf that Saddam had also secured. The MEF would mount up and do practice runs on that island, and they would just stop short of the island, turn around, and come back to their base.
A diversionary landing was not the only distraction that caught the attention of the Iraqi army.
And so there was a lot of fear tactics that we were using at that point. Using a lot of taking damaged fuel lines, damaged helicopters, damaged fueling trucks, things that we cannot use, setting them out in the middle of nowhere and just piling it up, making it look like it's operational to Iraqi intelligence, and they would in turn divert whole divisions of troops over because we had them thinking we were going to do something there. And what it did, it ended up effectively in many ways dividing up the Iraqi army before we even started fighting them.
The media, believing a bloody frontal assault inevitable, dutifully covered the preparations. Training grew more intense as the amphibious forces performed high-visibility exercises off the coast of Saudi Arabia to heighten the enemy wariness of an invasion from the sea.
It was very incredible, the deceptive operations that were going on. A lot of people don't give a lot of credit to psychological operations, how powerful they really are. And we had used an awful lot of that to convince the Iraqi army that we weren't ready to go by January at the time of the UN deadline, which was January 15th. And we were ready to go, honestly, probably as far back as November. But we wanted them to think we weren't ready, and so they kept packing their stuff away because where Saddam had isolated himself. He thought the Arab region would stand behind him.
Along with massive amphibious exercises, embarked Marines responded to calls for assistance from Maritime Interception Force warships. Marines were among the first combat troops placed aboard uncooperative Iraqi tankers during maritime intercepts in the early days of Desert Shield. As G-Day, the beginning of the ground war, neared, 17,000 Marines stood ready aboard the largest combined amphibious assault force since the Incheon landing in Korea. Meanwhile, the coalition's ground forces conducted feints and reconnaissance in force along the Kuwaiti border. A day before the launch of Operation Sabre, the sailors and Marines of the amphibious force found that their warfighting skills would not be immediately required as they had expected. But their preparation had not been in vain. It was at the core of the deceptive tactics which played a major role in the quick Allied victory. As the beginning of the ground war drew near, intelligence indicated that there had been no shifting of Iraqi forces. The grand deception had worked.
General Schwarzkopf had given a briefing that if the President of the United States would ask him to go at the time of the deadline, that they would be short of actually defying the order, saying they wouldn't be ready till February. We're in fact ready to go before Christmas.
The trap was set.